I'm joined now by Sam Harris, one of the world's great thinkers. Sam, I know you were listening to that debate I just had about free speech. Where do you sit on that? And in particular, Elon Musk's reversal of his decision to keep Alex Jones off the platform X?
Well, I think we're pretty confused on this particular point. I think much that is said about free speech, especially in America, doesn't really have to do with free speech when you're talking about these platforms. For instance, these platforms have to be moderated. It's never a question. It's never been a question of anything like quote free speech absolutism on these platforms. If they're not moderated, if you're not cleaning up some of the toxicity, X or Facebook or any of these other mainstream platforms would be like 4chan or 8chan, right? I mean, it would just be a completely sociopathic free-for-all. Nobody wants that. Nobody would tolerate that. Certainly, advertisers wouldn't spend any money to be next to that. So, as much as people call him a free speech absolutist, and he even calls himself that, that's never been in the cards. And he's banned people, as you know, for a wide variety of idiosyncratic reasons. And then he's brought Alex Jones back, saying that he would never do that. I think it's a mistake. I think Alex Jones is a genuinely bad actor. I think he monetized the misery of the Sandy Hook parents in a way that's truly unconscionable and unforgivable. And while he says he's apologized, he hasn't quite apologized for that, at least not in my hearing.
No.
So yeah, I think once you admit that even these public companies are platforms that are not analogous to the public square, right? They have to. You can't simply use the First Amendment in the U.S. and say anything that's legal can be said here, right? Because then it becomes a business that is guaranteed to fail. So they're businesses, right? And I think
I also think that the hearing Stephen Crowder try to say that, well, for all we know, he implied Alex Jones would have believed that Sandy Hook was fake. Nobody thinks that. Alex Jones knew it wasn't staged. Stephen Crowder knows that Alex Jones knew it wasn't staged. We all do. He deliberately flew with that conspiracy theory to generate vast amounts of wealth for himself. I mean, several $100 million came off the back purely of the reaction to that conspiracy theory. That's why he did it. So there's a disingenuousness at the heart of that, of people who defend him over whether he believed it or not. No one with a brain thinks he believed it.
There are Sandy Hook parents that have moved 10 times since he went berserk in their direction, right? And he knew his fans. Very early on, he knew what the consequences of his actions were, whatever he believed.
Yeah, they were being harassed in the street. One poor man said at one of the cases that his son's grave had been urinated on as a direct result of what Alex Jones was saying on air. And that just made me want to cry, actually. It was just horrific. Let's turn to why you actually came on tonight. We had an interesting debate last night involving several people. One was Mossab Hassam Youssef. He's the son of one of the Hamas co-founders who then renounced Hamas and moved away. And he said this about what's going on at the moment in the Israel-Gaza war. Let's take a listen.
Any person who put the religious identity above the highest interest of humanity, I have no respect for this people. The majority of the Muslim people identified with Hamas, supported Hamas. Show me how many Muslims out there who condemned Hamas genocide.
What was interesting about that is that he was really suggesting that the motivating factor behind what Hamas did and why people are supporting them in such big numbers in the Muslim community is because they're Muslims. It's religion-driven. Now, you're an atheist, but what do you think of that, of this idea that it's actually really about religion?
We have a vast number of people in the Muslim community worldwide, not just in the occupied territories or in Gaza, who are powerfully deranged by religious symbols and their religious identity, which is to say, it is the most important thing to them, but more important even than the deaths of their own children, right? We're talking about a culture, again, I'm not talking about just Palestinians, I'm talking about the Muslim community worldwide in dozens of countries that has produced a seemingly unending supply of suicide bombers over the last 50 years, right? We're talking about societies where phenomenon that should be impossible are simply to be expected. I mean, literally like rigging children to explode. Just that. I mean, think of how deranging that is for an army or a police force or an NGO or anyone to have to imagine that a child isn't simply a child, but a child might, in fact, under certain circumstances, be a bomb, right? I mean, that is the situation we're in. We're talking about a society, and now I'm talking about the Gaza and the West Bank in particular, where in their schools they teach 6-year-olds the love of martyrdom, the literal aspiration to die as a martyr, and the hatred of Jews. And many of these schools are UN funded, right? So this is a terrifying situation which the world has simply acquiesced to. I mean, the world on some level has simply accepted that there is a different standard held to the Muslim community, right? We all understand that you can stage a play making fun of Mormonism on Broadway and it can become the biggest musical in the United States, the Book of Mormon. But to stage such a play about Islam would be unthinkable, and to be unthinkable not because the First Amendment doesn't protect the freedom of speech with respect to Islam, it does, but that protection has been forfeited. It was forfeited long ago because of the tendency in the Muslim community to erupt with just psychopathic rage in response to what it perceives to be the desecration of religious symbols. And that should be intolerable to us. But it's, we have acquiesced to it. And the new norm is there are certain things you can't say about Islam. There are certain symbols you can't traduce. And it's because we know that tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people will march into the streets, even in the capitals of Europe.
Some people would say that the scale, the disproportionate, as many see it, scale of Israel's response is motivated in some part, again, by a religious motivation, that some of the more hardline, ultra-religious members of Netanyahu's cabinet really do want to have some kind of genocidal war with the Muslim Palestinians. I mean, does it work both ways?
Well, it does work both ways when you're talking about a tiny minority of Jews in Israel. I mean, the ultra-Orthodox, the settlers the minority of settlers who are motivated by their religious fanaticism. Yeah, I think those religious claims upon real estate in the Middle East are not justified, and they aren't, in fact, part of the problem. And so, yes, the settlements in the West Bank are certainly provocative, and they should be disallowed, right? If we were ever going to get to a two-state solution, part of the remedy there is to disenfranchise the religious maniacs on the Israeli side.
Sam Harris, great to talk to you again. I really appreciate you coming on and speaking with such clarity about a complex issue. Thank you very much.